If you and I were having dinner together and we were talking about your business, could you describe to me exactly why you feel stuck? Could you describe why you haven't hit your business goal yet? Maybe that's why you haven't got past $1 million or to $5 million or to your second crew. Could you tell me exactly what is happening and why it is happening and how you're going to fix it? If not, that's what we're about to talk about. I'm answering subscriber questions. The first 5 are all about everything I just described. The next 10 are questions that came in from the last Q&A video I did. If you don't know who I am, I've built multiple companies to 10 million, well past 10 million in annual revenue. All of them got there in about year 5 to 10, and then they kept going, and they still all exist today. And I tell you that to say, I'm not regurgitating information from an Alex Hormozy video or from a book. I've done it. So let's start at the top. I had ChatGPT summarize the questions. I'm reading them for the first time. I'm going to give you the answers. First 5, all about how to get you unstuck. I hit 500,000 and I thought it would be easier. Why does it feel so hard? Why does it feel harder than ever? Again, summarize questions from paragraphs down to a few sentences. The reason why your business, having seen a ton of businesses, feels so difficult, even though you've hit $500,000, I would actually say to you that the $0 to $500,000 is an incredibly difficult point. Around $500,000, most companies plateau and they get stuck. If you look at the data of businesses in the trades, and frankly, most businesses in general, around the 350 to 500,000, most companies get stuck and they never really get past that level. The general root cause is, I believe, 2 things. 1, it took so long to get there, you're now burned out and you don't have the energy to keep your foot on the gas. The bigger issue is you're possibly wearing all the hats of the business. You are the hero of the business. You are the main person of the business. You're doing way more than you can possibly be doing. And as a result, you have nothing more to give. You have no additional hours. There's not an extra 10 hours in your week you can find to move the business forward or fix major problems in the business. You are all consumed and it's exhausting. And so you have to figure out how to get freed up so that you can find time to grow revenue, to fix problems, to find more people to help you, maybe to find people to upgrade, frankly, to improve the quality of your team members. So what you want to be thinking about at this stage, if you don't already have an operations manager, you want to be thinking, am I more of a operations manager, a really strong business operator, or am I more of a growth person, the sales and marketing vision side of the business? You need to understand who you are. And then you need to find your counter. Most entrepreneurs, let's say a lot, tend to be more on the growth side. Sales, marketing, vision, direction, where are we going? They tend to not love operations as much. For many, the simple breakthrough is finding a killer operational person to complement you. That could become a business partner. That could become a key team member, just a payrolled employee. This is the breakthrough. It's the breakthrough I've experienced. I have to surround myself with really strong operational people because I can do it, but I don't love it. And I don't want to show up and do it every day. And therefore, I'm not going to be nearly as good as someone else who loves it. You need to figure out who you are. Based on, I used to own a coaching company, tends to be what I saw in the data and what I saw with the individuals that I worked with, they tend to need operational people around them. I don't know how that might be for you. Another reason why you might be stuck. Do you have enough margin in the business? Margin produces cash as long as you don't live too big of a lifestyle and take too much cash out of the business. Cash pays for marketing. Cash pays for upgrading your team members. Cash pays for finding team members. Cash pays for replacing your equipment and trucks as they start to wear down. Cash pays for new trucks and equipment as you grow. It's the name of the game. And if you don't have cash, then you're stuck. And the way you get cash is by having margin. And margin is created by running a profitable business. Another big one. Are you using the right technology or any technology? In this day and age, most people are using some kind of a business system to run their company. House Call Pro, Jobber, it's pretty common. It could be one of those two systems if you're a small company. Are you fully using those systems? And are those systems going to serve you as you get bigger? So what typically happens is a company starts out with no solution. They eventually implement something. In this day and age, Jobber's killing it. It's oftentimes a Jobber, sometimes a House Call Pro, and there are other systems. And then they start to progress past a few trucks. Or they say to themselves, hey, I want to eventually become a $5 million business. Those technologies, while good, will generally not get them to where they want to go. And so they need to move into the next level of software system that can handle tons of transactional volume and also has functionality built into it that will allow you to grow your business and handle all the little nuance of your business. And you can't even understand or imagine what that nuance is and what those little features are that you need when you're small because you haven't yet experienced the pain of getting bigger. So oftentimes a company is held back because they've not implemented technology, or they've implemented the wrong technology, or just as common, if not more common, they've implemented the right technology, but they haven't really used it to its full capacity. They're using 10% of it. Or they're trying to use it like the old software system that they hated because they don't want to go through the pain of getting all their data into the system or training their team, or they have a team member like an office person that complains about the system and wants it to be the old way, and that holds the company back. This is a huge one. Do you have the wrong people on the team? I'd call them bad people. Bad people in the sense that they're just not the right people. And because they're not the right people, everything is on you. Because they're not taking work off of you, or you're always fixing their problems. You're always apologizing. In other words, you're having to be the hero all the time. You're having to do way too much of the work. The other one that I talk about a lot is recruiting and marketing. There's these two engines. If you listen to me, you've heard this over and over again, and I will keep saying it because it's the game of business. It's cash, recruiting engine, marketing engine. So at $500,000, you are probably living in fear of either finding more clients or finding more team members. And by fear, I mean, if you sell more work, do you have confidence you'll find the people to do the work? If you find another team member and you want to hire them, do you have confidence you'll be able to find the work to keep them busy? And if you live in fear of either one of those things, you will keep your foot on the brake and you won't hire the person or you won't look for the clients. So you've got to get those two things in balance. Next question. I've been stuck between $250,000 and $1 million for years. What am I doing wrong? There's going to be a theme to all of these questions. What you might be doing wrong. Cash. Do you have enough cash? Are you building cash? Cash comes from profit. Are you creating enough profit in the business? Profit is created through strong operations. Profit's created through accurate pricing. Profit is created through the right team members. It's created through getting the wrong people out of the team. It's created through getting things off of your plate so that you can improve the business, sell more of the right kind of business, things of that sort. So if you're stuck between 250 and 1 million, other things I would look at. One that comes to mind, and I'm going to guess this isn't the case, but I'm going to speak to it just in case. Are you clear on where you're going? So as an example, are you wanting to be a $1 million business, a $2 million, a 5 or 10? So that $1 million mark is a bit of a challenging spot. And I don't think you want to stay there. And a lot of people will hear $1 million and they will think, if I could just get to $1 million business, I've arrived. The challenge with the $1 million is there's some really great things about it. One is you can now afford a really strong operational person to help you. But you really need to go a little bit further. And kind of from the $1.5 million range to call it 4, maybe 5, that can be a little bit of a challenging phase as well. I think it really gets easier after 5 million. But around 1 million, I don't think that's a great place to stop. I think you either want to keep going to millions of dollars or you want to maybe dial it back again and create this just ridiculously profitable business. And that's a bigger topic that I can talk about. And again, I just want to be clear, $1 million business isn't bad. If you set it up right, it could be absolutely fantastic. But for many, that's not a great stopping point. And so what you want to be clear on here is, are we going on to the next level, which I would call 5 million? Or are we going to settle somewhere right in here or just below $1 million and create this ridiculously profitable business with one or two really important people, like a really good ops person and a really good office person? And that would kind of be the team. And you're just going to sell the most profitable work and keep the business as simple as absolutely possible. So this is an area where you might need to figure out what you want to achieve. What else? Other reasons why I think you might be stuck would be you're missing an ops person or an office person. I've talked about that. I just explained that. Another one might be you're offering too many services, and so the business is too complicated for this size. Another might be you're not completely out of the field, and you really need to be out of the field to be growing the sales and marketing side of the business, keeping a close eye on customer service, doing inspections, finding people, activities that will grow the business past this $1 million mark. It's very hard to pull this off if you're still partially in the field. Frequently, by the time a person reaches about $1 million, they're generally getting out of the field, if not out of the field for quite some time now. Just depends how fast you got there. But if you're still in the field, that could be part of the problem. Another one you want to look at would be cancellations. I've talked about this before. So this is the idea that as the business starts to get bigger, let's say you're at $1 million, and let's say in your market, it's just pretty typical. You're going to lose 15% of your clients a year for a variety of reasons. Homes sell, people get divorces, just a whole ton of reasons. Well, if you're going to naturally lose 15% of your clients, if your marketing engine isn't bringing in more than the 15% that you're losing, you're going to stagnate. You're going to plateau. And so this is another example of where a company can get to a certain size. Could be $500,000, $1 million, it could be $3 million. And now their lead flow and their client conversions are not outpacing their cancellations. Sometimes you'll hear it called churn. Those are the things I would look at. Next question. Be honest. Can I really build a successful business with just one truck? Or should I go bigger? So the word successful was used, and I would say, well, it depends on what success means to you. For me, I would say, without question, go bigger. That's one of my messages. The reasons I say that are a one-truck business is very fragile. Something could happen to you. And even if that something only persists for 3 weeks, but you can't work, it could be unbelievably destructive to your business. And potentially, if you have a family, your family. And so it's very fragile. And I don't like things that are fragile or risky. Another one that comes to mind is you may feel totally cool about this now because it may be fun to work in the field and you might dread the idea of managing people. I'll tell you that you dread the idea of managing people because you're projecting on people that they're not great or they can't do it as good as you or they won't care like you care. That's not true. Some, yeah. Quite a few, yeah. But not the good ones. You can find people that are awesome, that make your life better, and you like them, and you like your company better because they're part of your company. There are lots of them. They exist. They're just not working for you. They're working for your competitors that have good businesses. So it's very easy for us to project onto other humans that they all suck, and that they are all lazy, and that they won't care, and it's just not true. And when you find them, you might feel very different about your business. And where I was going with this was, right now you might enjoy doing the work. And you might not believe there are good people, but I'll tell you there are good people. And I will also tell you that odds are as you get older and you get a little more tired and you have a few more aches and pains, you may wish that you'd built a little bit of a team around you. And so that's the second reason why I'm just not a fan of going bigger. I think going bigger gives you optionality, and I love optionality in life. I want to be able to decide what I want to do and go down that path. So If you go a little bigger, you get to choose, do I want to work in the field sometimes or never? That's optionality. So I'd suggest maybe you build bigger. I'd encourage you to do that. But can you have a one-truck business and make a lot of money? 100%. Can you have a one-truck business and be happy in life? 100%. No doubt about it. So if that's what you want, do it. That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur and getting to do this thing for yourself. I'm just simply saying, I'd encourage you, based on everything I've seen over a long period of time now, I don't think you'll ever regret having gone a bit bigger. Next question. What's a realistic way to break out of the $1 million plateau? I tend to think the plateau starts before 1 million, but every business is different. So in this person's situation, $1 million is the plateau that they're experiencing. It's kind of the same stuff. So what comes to mind that I would look at is, have you been upgrading the team? Back to ops manager. Maybe you started out with an operational assistant. You only had so much money, so you hired somebody that could get some operational stuff off your plate, but they're not really an operations person that can run with the ball and really manage people and really go out and deal with hard client complaints, really train team members in the field, hire team members, fire team members, look for new efficiencies, optimize the morning routine, think about ways we could save money, think about ways we could drive down the cost of goods sold so that we have more gross margin. How can we drive non-billable expenses out of the business? Waste. That's an operations manager. So you might not yet have that person. You might have a version of that person. And so that is creating a plateau inside your business because too much of it falls on you, or it's just not getting done right. And so you have a lower level of service or a lower level of quality inside the organization that's holding back your reputation. And it makes your marketing not work as good. You get less referrals. So that's one I'd really think about is, are you starting to think about upgrading your team? And the two core people at this size are who's in the office and who is over operations in the field. And of course, have you been a little hardcore on who actually gets to do the work? Meaning you have somebody that underperforms or is inefficient. Do you replace them with somebody that's better in the field? If you're not doing that, then the business is slowly breaking. It's slowly degrading. At $1 million, one of the reasons you can plateau, it's the same one I've said. It's my core belief of the three things that matter most going from $0 to $1 million. Cash you're building your recruiting engine, building your marketing engine. And oddly enough, those three things are also the most important things as you go to 5 million. They never stop being critical. And so I would say to you, are you really working on things operationally that drive more profit in the business? Pricing, dropping lousy clients, getting out of lines of business that don't make you much profit. Are you reducing complexity from the business? So many of us, me included, we started out doing all this stuff, all these different services, using lots of different types of equipment and trucks because we were piecing everything together because that's just what we could afford and that's what we knew. And the business just grows more and more and more complex. You have to train all kinds of different people using all kinds of different equipment and all kinds of different accounts. And then eventually you start to put rules on the business. We no longer take one-time work. It's just not that profitable, and it interferes with serving the clients we already have. That hurts our reputation. By doing a one-time job, we've delayed getting to our loyal 5-year client. By doing multiple services, we create complexity, lots of training, lots of different materials, trucks, equipment, etc. So we start saying no to some of those services. We might even look at our profit and loss statement and say, why am I doing this? I make $15,000 a year and I'm sure I make no profit. Gone. We get out of that line of business. We find somebody we can refer. And we just go through our list of we start getting all the same types of trucks, all the same types of equipment. We start creating structure and checklists and procedures so we're all doing the same thing. And we go through the business just like that. And we try to simplify, get all the complexity out of the business. And it's a little bit of a step back in a sense, because it might lead to a little bit slower growth for just a bit while you're working on this. But it's the thing that allows you to get past the plateau and eventually go fast. So you're really thinking about eliminating complexity, getting things as simple as you can so that you can run a really profitable, really organized, really great business and keep yourself from burning out. And then you start to add complexity as the business gets bigger because you can handle it. You can hire people to manage it. You can implement software and technology to manage it. You can create systems to manage it, but you can't do all that when you're little. And so we simplify to go faster, to later add complexity. And then the 2-engine thing again. Just extreme focus on finding people, finding clients. Next question. Is it even possible to grow without taking on tons of debt or killing yourself working 7 days a week? Why, yes, it is. Because I didn't take on any debt and I did not kill myself working 7 days a week on this business. It was always a part-time business. By this business, I mean our outdoor services business, City Turf. I killed myself working 6 days a week on 3 or 4 businesses all at the same time. That was a mistake. That's how I learned to focus. That's how I learned about simplicity. I got it down to eventually just 2 and then 3. But by then I had built teams around me to run those things. So 3 sounds like a lot, and it is a lot if you're having to do it all. But eventually, if you build things right, you're not doing it all. I also know tons of other people that have done this without a lot of debt, without killing themselves. But, it would be overselling it to say it's not hard. And it would be overselling it to say that there's no reason, you can 100% do it with no debt. I don't actually think you have to do it with no debt. I was overly conservative and it's massively slowed me down in every business. I mean, frankly, once I learned my numbers and I learned my marketing engine in my businesses and I learned the market, I would have been way more successful faster if I had applied debt, even a line of credit to these businesses. The problem with debt is when you use it wrong. You don't understand your numbers, meaning you don't understand if you're selling and doing profitable work. And therefore you sell more and more unprofitable work, which digs a bigger and bigger hole. And there's a variety of ways in which if you don't know your numbers, you get yourself into a lot of trouble. But when you understand the data of your business and you know what profitable work looks like and who profitable clients are and what to do and what not to do, and when you build a marketing engine where you understand how to get your ideal client and what types of marketing work best, and those types of marketing are profitable, meaning you're not overspending to get the client, then you can pour gas on your business and you can go way faster. I wish I had done that, but I rarely give this advice because most people will not learn the data of their business. I didn't do it for the longest time either. I heard it, I gave lip service to it, but I didn't really understand it. And so if you get those things right, then you can go faster. On the marketing thing, I'd say so many people will say, I'm going to do all this marketing, and they hear all these great marketing ideas. They hear about how something worked for someone else, and they go out and way overspend on a marketing campaign, whether it be pay-per-click or it be direct mail. And they burn tons of cash because they didn't test the concept first, because they just wanted to go fast and get the results this year. So you got to be careful around those things. But once you figure them out, there's nothing wrong with some debt. But yes, you can build without debt. But you've got to be very profitable, you grow slower, and you've got to be very methodical about your approach to growth. The other way you would do it is you keep your lifestyle low. Every dollar you take from your business is a dollar you can't spend to grow your business. And that means you have to say no to lots of things. New opportunities, new cool marketing techniques. There's just a lot of things that you can't do because you have to be careful with your money. And you have to stay very focused. And then over time, as you build more money, you can try new marketing campaigns. You can go into new service offerings, things like that. I go back to simplicity. You just want to keep things as simple as possible so that you can go fast. Complexity burns cash. The last thing I'd say is you don't want to grow too fast. I've seen a bunch of very healthy companies who are not using debt, or maybe using debt because you can get yourself in trouble by growing too fast with debt as well. And things are looking really good and they just grow so fast that either things start to break or money gets tight. And it gets so tight that they don't understand, it's kind of back to understanding your data, when the slow season comes or an economy turns down or something happens, they literally just run out of money. And when you don't make payroll, or you don't pay your sales tax, or you don't pay your payroll taxes, things start to implode really quick. So you can be very healthy, but eventually get yourself in trouble because you grew too fast. Next, everyone says I just need more clients, but I feel like that's not the real problem. Thoughts? It could be very true that it's not the real problem. There's a saying, or I don't know if it's a saying, but there's this concept that you just have to grow your way out of a problem. That depends. Sometimes you have to grow your way out of a problem because you're just not selling enough revenue to cover overhead, or to cover overhead and then leave you with profit. That's an example of growing your way out of a problem. But there's also an example of growing your way out of a problem by getting a lot more clients. That's what I mean by growth. Just leads to a faster demise of your business because you're selling work that's not really profitable. And as a result, you're getting yourself into more and more trouble. So an example would be if you're selling more work, more clients at bad prices, or you're selling more clients and you have bad employees. Let me restate that. You're selling more work, but at the wrong price, you're burning money. You're eating cash. You're selling more clients, but you have bad employees. You're either not making money. It might be priced right, but they're not performing it on budget, so you're losing money, or you're slowly destroying your reputation in the market that will be incredibly difficult to recover from. Or, kind of similar to the bad employee thing, you're selling more clients, but you have bad operations. So you have so many inefficiencies. The work is priced correctly, but the crews and the techs and the team are not producing work efficiently. And therefore, you're burning cash. Therefore, you're hurting your reputation. Another one comes to mind is your marketing to get more leads, but your conversion is not good. So you're spending lots of money on marketing, but you're not answering the phone. Your message isn't converting. Something's wrong. So you're buying lots of leads, spending lots of marketing dollars, but you're converting them into clients at such a low percentage that the cost of acquiring a client is so expensive that it'll take you 6 months, a year, 2 years to even break even on every new client that you acquire. So you're burning cash and you're getting yourself into trouble. So what you want to do is you want to think about all of these areas. You want to think about pricing, the quality of your operations and efficiency, the quality of the people you have on the team, the quality of your lead and sales process. And you want to fix all of those things. And then when you do, kind of like the example I gave earlier, do you understand the data of your business? And when you do understand the data of your business, and when you do understand the math of your marketing and sales engine, you can then pour gas on the business. So to answer the question, you have to clean up all those things and get them right. And then when you do that, growth, meaning more clients, might be the solution to your problems. But it's not the solution to your problems before. All right. I've got about 10 questions that came in from my last Q&A session that I'm answering. Starting at the top. What are your thoughts on commissions, paying techs a percentage versus hourly? The whole world runs on incentives, meaning there's an incentive that motivates all of us to do a thing or not do a thing. And so incentives are a great way to get people to create the outcome that you want. So I think of paying somebody on performance as an incentive that should lead to motivation with the right person. Now, if you're converting your company to an incentive-based company, pay for performance, it could be that not everybody on the team will be able to make the change. So it might mean that you need to replace 20% of your team members or more to find team members that are motivated by this type of an incentive. The other thing that I think of is an incentive for one thing might create an outcome in another area that you didn't want. So I incentivize the team to go faster. And I love the idea of pay for performance because I imagine it will reduce my need to manage these people. It will simplify my life. I'm tired of having the conversations. I'm tired of managing them. I'm tired of checking on them. And so it's easy to say or imagine that by throwing money at them, it will fix all the problems and will make it better for you. I don't believe that. Especially as you scale this up. With just a couple awesome people, yeah, that might be the case. But if you're going to build a big business with tons of people, there's no getting around the fact that incentives in one area create negatives in another area. Back to my point, I incentivize them to get the work done faster. They want to make more money, and therefore they go faster. That's what I incentivized. The negative is, because they go faster, they might forget to close a gate. They might forget to write thorough notes and leave them on the door. They might cut a few corners just this week, but I'm not going to do it again next week. We just got to hurry this week because we're running behind. And those items slowly build over time into negative reviews, unhappy clients, less referrals, a whole ton of items. And so if you're going to create an incentive called pay for performance in this example, then you have to also have a system to handle the negatives that will happen, because they will happen. And if you do both, you still do management, you still have hard conversations, you still fire people, you're still picky about who you recruit, you still inspect the work, and you have an incentive, I believe you can have a great outcome. But I think the problem is that most people think pay for performance is magic, and it's going to eliminate all the stuff they hate about their business. And that is not how I believe it works, based on my experience. An alternative, you can always do hourly plus some kind of incentive. It doesn't have to be pure pay for performance. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm just saying it's not black or white. It isn't all pay for performance or hourly. It could be a hybrid. Another thought that comes to mind, I don't know if you would have gone through this in your business, but let's just say you went through the COVID times and you had to go remote. You might have experienced this scenario where some team members, no problem going remote. Other team members couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. And so if you were going to stay full remote for non-field work, then you would have had to replace one individual that just can't function in a remote environment with a person who can. Kind of the same thing with pay for performance. Just because you offer it doesn't mean people are going to all be excited about it. And some people will be excited about it, but they just can't do it. They just can't make it work. And so just know you might have to replace some of your people. The second part of this question was around commissions. I like commissions, but I also despise commissions. And so I tend to fall on the side of, I don't want to do commissions. And I'm going to tell you why. And this would be a highly debatable issue that I have multiple friends who will adamantly fall on the other side of the fence on this one. I think commissions, without question, can really spike growth. And I think commissions, just like pay for performance, offer an opportunity to go way faster. But the way I think about things is, what is the company I want to own? What is the company I want to own for the next 20 years? If I could create the perfect company, what would it look like? And my experience with commissions is that they are somewhat destructive to culture. I find it very difficult, and this could be fair or not fair, but I'd like to see the data where I'm wrong. When you commission an individual, you're incentivizing them to sell as much as they can possibly sell, to make as much money as they can possibly make. And therefore, you might sell clients you don't want. You might sell business you don't want. There's a whole stream of outcomes that come from that. And when you do that, you put pressure on operations, and you put pressure on the office, and you put pressure on all the other parts of the business. And that leads to internal strife. And I could elaborate on this, and I'm just going to keep it short. But what I have noticed is I think commissions are hard on culture in the long term. I think they are not necessarily what is best for the client. And if I most care about having an incredibly strong culture, and if I most care about having an incredible, spotless reputation in the market, and if my USP is, and I want my USP to be, that we will do right by you 100% of the time, I find it very difficult to balance all of that with commissions. Now the thing is, you can point at many really incredibly successful commission-based companies, and what I tend to find is the leader of that company is a pure sales guy or gal. Like, that's just who they are, and they couldn't build any other company than a massively sales-driven organization, and that's the culture they want, and they like that. And for some, it works insanely well. And then the other people that I tend to see commissions working really wonderful with are PE companies or anybody that is just juicing their company to sell it. And they don't care what the business looks like in a decade, and they don't care what it looks like in 20 years. This is a really contentious opinion that I understand that some could bring very strong arguments to me against what I just said, because you can point at one incredibly financially successful company after another that are pure commission based. And I would agree, but they aren't the company I want to own, not for the next 20 years. And so you have to, and I think the reason I tell you this story is you have to decide for yourself. I wouldn't tell you one or the other is bad. Well, I gave you my opinion on why I think it's negative, but you have to decide what you want and how you're wired and how you work. I'm just telling you, this is, again, the beauty of being an entrepreneur. You get to decide what you want to build, and you get to build your business. And I like marketing-driven businesses. And some oftentimes will grow slower, but in the long term, I love them. Chick-fil-A is not they are not a sales-driven organization, and this isn't a good example, but I think you might understand what I'm saying. I think Chick-fil-A has been methodical about how they have crafted their reputation, and they have done what they thought is best for the company. They've focused on their culture. They have focused on the language they use at a customer service level. They've done all these things. Compare to them to all the other fast food restaurants that are not still owned by a founder, who have been through private equity deals, have been public, and have gone through that whole ringer, and just compare the two. And I would rather build, I'm not saying I have the Chick-fil-A of lawn care and pest control companies, but if I'm going to own it for the long term, that's what I want to build. I don't want to build Burger King, and I don't want to build whatever other brand you want to mention. I don't want any part of that. And I think that commissions play this little small part in degrading a company over decades. And so I'd rather own the best company with the best culture that takes the best care of their people, and the internal dialogue and communication are great, because that company will do the very best job serving the customer and doing right by the customer over the long term. I don't need to extract an extra cent out of every one of my clients for the short term. And that's what happens in private equity world and public company world. I don't want any part of it. So that's where my thinking comes from. But I got on a soapbox there, and I believe you can easily argue that commissions are killer and they work, and I wouldn't disagree with you. I just told you my frame of mind. So I think in my world, I'd rather reallocate commissions and the compensation for sales to marketing and wowing the client and first impression strategy with the client. And that's where I intend to allocate money. And I believe over time, what comes of that is I will have a better business. Next question. Can you give us some insight on shops location, size, visibility, and investment. And I actually read the full question to this one before it was summarized. And they were also asking about the value of a shop being seen from a marketing perspective. So my thoughts on this: in home services, in residential, the proximity of your shop to where your clients live, really important, because every dollar you save driving drives down non-billable, drives up profit. So you really want to be thinking about that. I don't think that the visibility of your shop matters. So as an example, if you were to get your shop closer to the main streets that your clients, potential clients might drive down, that would be awesome. So it would be a bonus. But what it might cost you to make that happen isn't necessarily worth the money. Or in the cost might be simply that the real estate costs more money, whether you're buying it or you're renting it. And I think you can reallocate those dollars to wrapping or spraying and vinyling your trucks, to marketing. So I don't think it's that critical to try to optimize for your location being seen. You can just spend those dollars in different ways to get visibility. So I wouldn't worry about that. If you can do it, if it's not going to break the bank, awesome. Other thoughts would be, we started our business for years and ran out of a storage facility. Forever we ran out of storage facility. It just so happened that that storage facility had these little offices where in the front you could rent I think it was like a 10 by 10 little office. And in the back it had a 10 by 15 warehouse with a roll-up door. And that's where we started. And we just converted the back, that was a little warehouse, into a full office. And then we eventually rented the one next door and the one next door and the one next door, and we cut holes between the units and turned it all into this office. And we were right there with our storage units. I've seen others that have rented places with storage units, and then they've brought in the equivalent of a mobile home and put it on free land near the mobile, right there within the self-storage place. They got permission to do it. They made a deal with the owner. To me, this is the single most cost-effective way to do it. We didn't use this strategy, but some will put storage units on different sides of town to reduce the drive time, to be closer to where their team members live. And then their managers essentially live out of a truck with a computer and their cell phone in the truck, and they just roam instead of having a physical office. There's lots of ways you can play this. I think in the beginning, you really want to be cost conscious. I also think you want to try to be as close to your field team as possible. That's what we've concluded. It's ideal to have your office or your workspace be with the crews. But if you can't do that, then every morning you're there in your truck, and every evening, best you can, you're in your truck. I understand people probably come in at different times. So those are some things I think about. Buying an office, building an office, ridiculously distracting. A friend of mine, Jason Cupp, who has looked at tons of people's data, has always said to me, when somebody builds an office, they tend to lose about a year inside their business. And I've always believed that to be true. And then years ago, when we built our own place, I think it was proven. The other reason why, another thought, they're coming to me here. I have given many people over the years the advice of not to buy land and build. The reason for that is, right now, you could buy land and you could build, and you have a 8-truck business or a 5-truck business. And so you're going to build for 15 or 20 trucks. And one day that property will become your constraint. And because you can only handle 15 to 20 trucks, you will not go to 30 or 40, because it will require you sell your property, or you keep your property and rent to somebody else and you go do a new property. I hate constraints. Even at a subconscious level, things like that become a constraint. You accidentally constrain yourself and you don't go for it because you've got this bottleneck. I think renting generally allows you to be more flexible. Now, I think there might come a day in your business where you can justify building. We did, and we bought tons of land so we would never have a constraint. But that's expensive, and that's a luxury you have if you're big and have a lot of money. But for most, and in some markets, the property is such a constraint, you have to be very careful. Those are the things I think about. Just really, the game is cash. And so you're fighting this balance of not overspending so that you can preserve as much cash as possible to grow, but at the same time not being ridiculously wasteful. Meaning you don't make decisions just to save $1 that are costing you 50 cents in wasted money. So it's really tough balance between, as you're thinking about where you invest money, I tend to not think it's in the office for a long time. I tend to think you find all your efficiencies through operations and you rent. And then someday you reevaluate. Should I still use credit cards for payments if I don't have cash flow issues and it costs me 3.3% in fees? Yes. I would never leave credit cards. I mean, to me, it's as simple as who wants to pay in cash? That's, in the work world that's younger. Everybody wants their points on their credit card. Everybody wants to pay with a credit card. That's what everybody does. Everybody's paying on subscriptions these days. So by requiring somebody to write a check, you're kind of flying in the face of what everybody wants. Now, that doesn't mean they won't do it. So that's just one of many reasons. I believe your collections risk goes up, so your bad debt expense goes up. I believe your internal administration goes up of collecting the checks and cashing the checks. I believe it's more sticky to use credit cards. They're not having to physically write the check each month or put it into bill pay online, and therefore they're not having to think about you as much or question the expense. An alternative is you could use ACH, but I don't love ACH for a variety of reasons. So you can try to get people to take ACH, and if they don't take it, then you take credit card. That will help drive down your expense. And then the other one I would say is credit cards are the key to cash flow or speeding up cash flow. And are you done growing, or might you continue to grow this business? And maybe a lot. You'll never regret having cash flow, fast cash flow. So I would tell you, there is literally zero chance I would eliminate credit cards. Zero. It's like I can't even come up with a reason why I would possibly want to do that. So I'd encourage you to find the 3.3% elsewhere in the business. And frankly, you're not losing 3.3 because you're saving money on bad debt expense, on admin cost. So I don't know what it's really costing you, but it might be costing you 2%. It might be costing you less than 2% would be the real number. Next question. I'm scared to spend money on ads. How do I know when I'm ready? You do all the basics first. SEO, Google Maps, you're on Nextdoor and maybe Angie's and maybe Yelp and whatever site you can get listed on. And depending on if you're doing construction or installation type work, maybe Thumbtack and other services like that. You're marketing back to your existing clients to sell more work to them. There's just a variety. You're asking for referrals. There's a variety of basics you do first, and you really dial that stuff in. And this question was specifically about ads. Okay, so then there's another level up where you're doing potentially direct mail. You're getting into LSA ads, local service ads with Google. You could also run Google Ads, which used to be called AdWords. AdWords specifically carries a much higher cost. You move to these activities after you're getting everything else, after you're doing everything else. And so that's where I say you do the basics first. The way you know you're ready is when you're doing all the basics and you need to drive more lead flow, then you start to add these other more expensive marketing methods. I would add local service ads before you add Google ads. Most people do not have success with Facebook. I don't believe that's because Facebook doesn't work. So you would want to test Facebook, but you need to do a lot of testing. I generally suggest with both Facebook paid ads and Google paid ads, you get help. Just go find a person that's an expert and have them help you with this. But make sure that the creative or the copy is great. Question what they're doing. But I tend to recommend in this case, you find a company that will help you with this, even if you're bigger. And then you can start small. So for example, if you're going to do LSA, you can limit your budget. If you're going to do Google Ads, start with $1,000 a month and only buy branded keywords or maybe exact match keywords. And just start small and test. But again, I'm going to point you back to an expert, a company that just does pay-per-click management, because they're going to have the expertise and they're going to know stuff you can't know. They're going to do all kinds of things like uploading your client list so you're not marketing to or trying not to market to people that are already your clients and wasting money. There's all kinds of little things they're going to know to do. You're not going to know to do. So any money you spend with them will be offset in savings. Pay-per-click is a place just like direct mail that you can blow a ton of money really, really fast. But again, whomever you hire, if you like or will invest in learning marketing, you need to watch the copy like a hawk. And you need to make sure that they're trying lots of copy tests. I'll just leave it at that. Next, can you do a video on how to make a flyer? I'm stuck trying to make it perfect. Someday, yes, I'll do this. What I would say is a door hanger, a flyer, a postcard, but this also applies to all other marketing. For it to be good and have a chance of converting, you need to understand basic copywriting. You need to understand the basic framework of copy that works. Headline, multiple paths of readership, probably not on a flyer, bullets. There's a whole variety, the offer, the hook, the call to action. You need to understand these topics. There are a ton of copywriting books out there. One that comes to mind, and it's old, is a book called The Ultimate Sales Letter by a guy named Dan Kennedy. I haven't followed Dan in ages. Dan's old stuff is fantastic. It still applies. There are a lot of alternatives to this book, but it's one that comes to mind that Dan was very good at making these topics approachable for small business. So you could buy the Ultimate Sales Letter book and skim it. Another idea might be, I have not read Alex Hormozy's books, but I'm guessing they're good. I'm sure they're good. What I do know of Alex is that there is no doubt in my mind he came from Dan Kennedy in some way. I just listen to him, it's like, oh, that's Dan Kennedy. That's Dan Kennedy. And so where I'm going with that is you might search his YouTube videos to see if you could find anything Alex has on copywriting, because he is, I think, one of the best at making complex topics simple. And so I would look to see if he has anything on copywriting that might just give you the 45-minute version. But that's where you want to start. A lot of the old copywriters are going to talk in terms of it all being just about what the copy said, the ad, what it says. I don't agree with that anymore. I think all of that is true. However, we live in an Apple world, and we live in a social media world now. And so much of what is consumed and so much of what grabs attention is based on imagery. So in your postcard or your flyer, it's about the headline, the copy, but it's also about the imagery and the look. It doesn't have to be over-designed and over-fancy, super crazy fancy or anything like that, but it does need to be visually appealing in the sense that it pulls a person in. The thing you want to think about with direct mail is everything, and this is an old concept, and Dan Kennedy will mention it, I think it was an old Gary Halbert concept. Everything goes into an A pile or a B pile, and it's just so true. Think about how you check your mail. Like you flip through it, like this is trash, I'll keep this and open it. This is trash, I'll keep this and open it. That's what's happening. So in that split second of it either goes in the A pile, the keep it pile, or the B pile, which is the trash pile, what is it that's pulling that person in? It's usually the few words of the headline and something visual related that makes them think, oh, this might be something I need to look at. Meaning they can't tell for sure if it's junk mail or trash, or It's a need they have, a problem they need solved, something they've been looking to solve. And so you're thinking about your headline and imagery to pull them in. And then once you pull them in, now you're thinking about how do I get them to go from headline to the first sentence, to the next sentence, to the offer, to the action, making a phone call, taking a picture of the QR code, texting us, whatever the case might be. And what is the thing you've got to say right now to get them to do this now versus set this on the counter in their junk pile and never get to it because they forgot? That's how you're thinking about this. So instead of spending 30 minutes laying all of this out, those are some places that I would point you. I would also tell you that EDDM. Oh, actually, sorry, that's my next question. I got off here. I was looking at the question again. I'll wrap with this and say, if you got reviews, if you got pictures that look local of actual work, you want those. If you want to think about where the marketing piece is going, so who is getting it, what is it you have to say to them to connect with them? So you need to match whatever's on that piece with whomever's receiving it. It's called segmentation. Kind of think about that. You can read about that. You got to think about an offer that will get them to take action. And I'll stop there. The next one was, should I do direct mail? That's what just got me distracted again. Yes, maybe eventually. The way you think about direct mail, in my opinion, is you use digital, cast a wide net across your service area. You use direct mail or door hangers to zero in on your very most ideal clients and get them, and to build density in an area. So I'm a big fan of direct mail. Haven't used it in ages and ages, and we will start using it again now that I'm back involved in the business. It's highly risky, meaning it can go really, really bad, and it can cost you a massive amount of money. It's also more expensive than a lot of other marketing methods in that it just costs more money to get a conversion, but it could be that it's a very valuable conversion in that it builds more density in the market that drives down operational cost, or you're getting an incredibly ideal client that will buy lots of different things from you. There's a whole lot of benefits that might come from direct mail that outweigh the cost of doing it. It has gone wrong for so many people. You need to be very careful. Think testing. You've got to test in small batches before you go all in, or you could get incredibly burned. The thing that a minute ago I said something about EDDM, that's because I saw direct mail here in the question. EDDM works. It's affordable. It's a strategy I'd point you to, but it's not necessarily the only strategy you want to use. EDDM is every door direct mail that the post office facilitates delivering to carrier routes. You can go Google all that. A few more questions. How do I figure out what my goal per man-hour rate should be? How do I calculate my per man-hour rate? Wow, that's a complex question. Okay. Let's see if I can articulate this. And then I want you to double and triple check me on this, because this is not something I ever did. Because I didn't know what I was doing when I started the business. And I learned these lessons progressing through the business. So a couple ways to do this would be to take all your labor cost. And by that I mean your payroll taxes, your bonuses, your actual payroll expense, what I would call the all-in labor cost, per hour. So what does it cost you? So as an example, sorry, I'm having to think about this one. If it cost me $20 an hour for an employee, so I could find my average employee cost, you could do, but I would ideally do this at a service level. So if that person cost me $20 an hour, then I build up their cost from there. I add in burden, I add in all the other expenses. And then on top of that, I'm adding in a profit margin. To me, this is what I'm about to say is a very elementary strategy, but I know people use it. They'll then take that labor cost and they'll multiply it by 2.5 or 3. So if it's $30, then I need to be charging, what would that be, $75 or $90? That's one strategy. A second strategy would be I take all the expenses of my business, including my COGS, so all expenses, and I divide those expenses by the total billable hours for the year. That's important. It has to be billable hours, not your total payroll hours, your total billable hours. And I'll explain that in a moment. So you would take all your expenses for a calendar year. You would divide those expenses by the total number of hours you sold, billable hours. And that's going to give you a break-even rate per man hour. I sure hope I'm saying this right. This is complex. That's going to give you a break-even rate per man hour. You then need to add a profit margin over top of that break-even number. So in this case, you would not be multiplying it by 2.5 or 3. That was a different scenario. In this case, you would literally be saying, we want a 30% margin, and you would add the 30% margin, profit margin, over top of the formula I just gave you. And again, that formula was total expenses for the year, including COGS, so all expenses, fixed, all of it, divided by total billable hours. If you use all hours, not just billable, so if you use payroll hours, you're going to be underpricing. The other problem with this concept is it's a lagging number. It's what you did last year. But it gives you so the two examples I just gave you will give you a direction. So I would take what I said, I would write that down, and I would go Google this a bit and read about it, but I gave you a clue as to where to look. I just want to be clear, I never personally did this. I'm just telling you how I believe you do it. I'm sure there are other and maybe better strategies, but now you've got a couple things. I gave you two. You've got a couple things to think about now where you can go do some research. It'll at least get you started. Next question. How do you get into the customer's mind? You can't by listening to them, by talking to them, by listening to recorded sales calls, by listening to recorded customer service calls, by visiting them at the job site and talking to them, by reading all their complaints. I don't know if I said this, by reading their reviews, reading the testimonials, by surveys. It's as simple as tons and tons and tons of conversations. It's you thinking about how you would operate, how you buy, how you think. It's by talking to your friends. It's by talking to your team. What are they hearing? What are the conversations they're hearing? That's what comes to mind. Tons of conversations, and you're trying to sort all of that out and come to understand them. I remember way back, a couple times from a marketing standpoint, literally sitting like in my truck in a neighborhood or a couple neighborhoods. I can picture it to this day. This was a long, long time ago. And just watching what happened in the neighborhood. They were our ideal clients. So, and I remember doing it in the morning. So you'd see moms coming out and walking their kids to school. You just kind of saw the activity of the day. And I did this in a couple different times. And what I was doing is I was writing copy at the time. This is back when I did all the marketing. And I was trying to figure out how to get into their mind. I was trying to understand their problems. I was trying, you can also do this through data. Who you're talking to, what kind of income do they make? Is the wife stay at home? How many kids do they have? Like you can kind of, is this 2-family income? What kind of cars do they drive? Those types of things will help you get into the buyer's mind. Is it fair to say a business works if it's a win for the customers, employees, and the owner? Yes. Yes, in the long term, that's a win. And that's what you're optimizing for. But I would also say if you have to pick one of the three, you're optimizing for the employees to a degree. I do buy into this idea. I just really do believe the quality of the company in terms of how it treats its team and cares for the team and grows the team is imperative, because that's then how the team is the face of the company. That's how they'll care for the company or the client. And that's how you build a good company. So to me, the hierarchy is, as the owner, you get to craft this business you're building and direct it. But it only works if you have a killer team and you get the wrong people off the team. So from a hierarchy standpoint, it's all about the team. That's where all the effort goes. And then the great team who feels like they're actually working at a quality company and serving a good purpose, and they feel cared for and valued, will then take great care of the client. And when you take great care of the client, you accidentally end up with a great company. So that's how I think about it. Last question. Can you talk about private equity? Some say they're taking over HVAC and raising prices unfairly. I actually answered this question already, but I answered it in the comments. So I remember this question. So this question was much longer. I'm not negative on private equity, but I'm gonna say a few things about private equity, and then I'm gonna speak to what's happening with private equity in the trades. So first, let's define what private equity is. Private equity is nothing more than a pool of money that is then invested in a business or real estate or something else. It could be invested in a variety of things, but it's just a pool of private money that's being invested. Like, investors come in and pool the money, and then that money is used to go buy something. Real estate, businesses, etc. There's nothing wrong with private equity, but a lot of people hear BlackRock, or they hear the boogeyman they hear all these stories about evil private equity. I mean, it's like pure nonsense. It's not evil. I used the example of Alex Hormozy earlier. I think a lot of people know who he is. He's done a masterful job of building his brand. He's private equity. That's what he is. He is building a private equity. He is a private equity business. He's right now just using his own capital. I don't know if he will eventually not use just his capital. But if it's his own capital, he's running a private equity model. It could be his money and somebody else's money, still private equity. It could be my money and a couple other people. We pull it together, we go make investments. That's private equity. It's used as this boogeyman. The problem is, like everything in life, there are lousy private equity companies. And so they have left a wake of destruction. Fast food chains, in-house dining chains, aviation companies, clothing brands. We can go down the list of the companies that have been destroyed by private equity. But that doesn't mean all private equity is bad. That's like saying that all humans are bad because there are some bad people. It's absolute nonsense. So private equity as a whole is not bad. What I would argue is private equity has an incentive problem. And the incentive problem is that private equity takes your money. Let's just make this real. You can invest just like I invest in private equity and other people invest in private equity. In fact, I think of ultra high net worth people in the United States, something like 25% of their wealth is in private equity. Like, everybody does this that has a bunch of money because the returns tend to be good, especially because we've had a low debt environment for so long. Not low debt. Oh no, said that wrong. Low interest rate environment. All right, so you're wealthy. You invest $1 million into a private equity company. That private equity company takes your $1 million and they go out and they buy a company. And their job is to give you back your $1 million with $1 to $2 to $3 more $1 million on top of it. That's what you want. And so how do they do that? They go out and they buy a company and they make that company more profitable. They make it grow faster. They do whatever they got to do that makes it attractive to the next buyer, whether that be a private equity company or that company goes public that they invested in. Those are their exit paths. They're either going to sell the company to another private equity company. They're going to sell it to a strategic. So as an example, if you own a fertilization weed control company, maybe you're selling to True Green. That'd be an exit path. or it's a fertilization weed control company, they sell it to another private equity company, or it gets so big, they take it public. Those are the three ways that you get back your $1 million plus more money. So what's their incentive? It's to get you back a bunch of money. And they want to do it on as short a time horizon as possible because that's how IRR and returns work. It needs to be quick so that you get a great return on your money as a percentage. So how do they do this? They drive cost out of the business. They try to sell more work as fast as they can. They make all these changes to try to make the revenue grow and it more profitable so that the next person will pay 3 times more for it. And that is exactly what you want as an investor in private equity. It's an incentive problem. And it's back to my example of pay for performance. And the incentive creates scenarios where private equity companies do destructive things to companies and brands. They make lots of short-term decisions. And as a result, the company is harmed. But it doesn't always happen that way because private equity is one of the best returning of all asset classes. They don't destroy everything, but they do destroy things. And they don't usually carry out the vision of the owner. They change a lot of things to get the business to go way faster than the owner the previous owner. They do things different so that it will grow faster. They raise prices, they do all this stuff. So that explains private equity. And so I'll say one more thing about it. Private equity has the same exact problem as public equity, which is the stock market, going public. There are incentives as a public company to report on a quarterly basis. And so when companies go public, they tend to do tons of short-term things. They don't want to, they don't need to, or they don't want to, but they get forced into it. And they especially get forced into it if their business isn't Apple or Google or Amazon, one of the top of the best companies. If you're not one of those companies, or you're not hitting Wall Street's expectations, you get forced into an environment of doing things that are short-sighted so that your stock doesn't get destroyed. It's the same exact concept. One is private and one is public. Exact same concept, exact same incentives, or very similar incentives. I just think there's this massive misunderstanding on private equity. That's my basic explanation. Now, how does this impact you? Private equity is coming into the trades. I believe they're coming into the trades because they have identified, I think they're coming in a bigger way. Okay, let me back up. I predicted a decade ago that we would eventually see private equity in home services like we see in commercial. The reason I've been predicting that is because when we started Service Autopilot, we weren't trying to be a jobber. We weren't trying to be like a house call pro. We were a level up. We were trying to handle large transactional volume, tons and tons of jobs, tons of calls, tons of to-dos. I believed that more technology would appear like ours, and it did, that would enable home services companies to manage thousands and thousands of clients. Previously, it was incredibly difficult to do that because your technology was built for small companies. But once companies were enabled to grow big because there was technology to manage them, I felt the market would become more attractive to private equity. I think that's exactly what's happening. But there's another thing that's happening. Well, 2 more things. There's just bazillions of dollars on the sideline looking to invest in private equity, and private equity companies have so much money, they're looking for places to deploy, and so they look at new industries. There's so much I could say on this. Another one that's happening, I believe, is with everything that's happening in AI, people get nervous. Where can we safely deploy cash that in a decade or 5 years when we sell that business, or when it's going to be time to take our money back out of that business, will that industry we've invested in even exist? Will it have been disrupted by AI? Will its profits have been eroded? Like, what's going to happen to it? There's all these question marks. And between AI and robotics, people look at home services and say, hey, these are stable long-term businesses that will be made more profitable because of the coming technologies and probably aren't going to be destroyed because of the technologies that are coming. So more money is coming into our space. There's more reasons, but there's all these reasons why I believe the trades and home services are going to continue to see investment from private equity. Why this is good for you is it will give you a path to exit your business that you never had before. The other reason it's good for you, because there's more buyers. The other reason it's good for you is the more people that come in, simple supply and demand. They're going to be competing for the best companies, which will raise the valuations of those companies. Again, really good for you. So this might give you an exit opportunity that would allow you to become extremely wealthy that you would have never had private equity not come into the market. A little side note. Private equity valuations are 100% pegged to public market valuations. Because in private equity, you're either going to probably sell your business to another private equity company, or you're going to go public, or you might go strategic. But the ultimate exit, the ultimate general exit is where prices are pegged to, valuations are pegged to, is becoming a public company. And so if the stock market gets destroyed or stays low for a long time, eventually private equity companies' valuations come down, or because valuations come down, the investments that were made via private equity, they're hard to get out of. It's hard for them to sell those companies because they're in at a certain price and valuations have come down. And now if they get out, it's going to be really bad returns for their investors. So they just stay in the investments for longer periods of time. I'm probably getting off in the weeds a little bit, but it's important to understand because this is what's happening right now in the market. And this could be incredible for you. Because if you want to build a bigger business, this could be your exit opportunity. If you don't even build a big business, if you only build to $1 million or $2 million, you might even still get a better valuation than you could have ever imagined, or even have an opportunity to sell your company when you would have never been able to sell it, because a private equity company will buy you up to roll you into a bigger deal. This is really good news for most people. Now, what's the negative? The negative is private equity will come into a space and they will spend tons of money so your competitors will now have money invested in them. And they will be able to spend more money on marketing. They will be able to hire better people. They will be able to implement data systems. They will implement technologies to run more efficient. They will do all those things that I talk about because that's how you make money. That's why I talk about it. Private equity is not dumb. They know all the same stuff I know. They're going to do all those things. That does create pressure on you if you choose not to do those things. So that's a negative for you. The positive is they will raise prices. That, if the market raises prices, it makes it easier for you to raise prices. The other thing is, because private equity has this incentive to go really fast, that incentive can create negatives. Sometimes it can be destructive to a brand's reputation or to customer service because private equity might cut customer service. They might invest more in sales and marketing and by raising prices and less in delivering the service because all they care about is growing this thing and growing the profits as much as they can for the next 3 years. Then they're selling it. So that's positive for you potentially in that now the reputation of the competitor is not as good. So it's kind of a balance here. The positive for you is now you have an exit opportunity. You might get really wealthy because of it. The other positive is prices go in the market, up in the market. That's good for you. The negative for you is that the competition has a lot more money and they might be getting more sophisticated. So you need to up your game. I do not live in fear of private equity coming into my market at all. I think it's good for me. But a lot of people, and that's where this question came from, are in tremendous fear of it. I will tell you, it doesn't matter if you're scared of it or not. It's happening and it's going to continue and it's going to get bigger. And so you have to level up. If the industry is good and the business is good, private equity is coming for it and you can't stop it. But it doesn't mean you can't build an insane business. It doesn't mean you can't outmaneuver them. And it doesn't mean you can't last for decades to come. I believe all those things are true. So I really am not overly worried about private equity. I just see it as an exit opportunity if I ever want it. And I would encourage you not to worry about it too much because you're going to up your game. All right, that's it for the questions. If you add more, I'm not going to do any more Q&As for a bit, but if you add your comments to this video, your questions, I will take all of them. I'll put them on my list, and when I do the next Q&A video, I will answer all of your questions. So add all your questions here. I promise you I will get to them eventually. Thanks a lot.